Good day to everyone. So today's discussion will be centered on Lesson 5, and that's on Footnote to Youth by Jose Garcia Villa. Today's objective are the following. Number 1, to infer literary meaning from literal language based on usage. Number 2, to analyze the figures of speech and other literary devices in the text. Number 3, to explain the literary, biographical, linguistic, and socio-cultural contexts and discuss how they enhance the text's meaning and enrich the reader's understanding. And lastly, for you also to explain the relationship of context with the text's meaning. So the other week, or rather 2 weeks ago, we have tackled poetry, which was using Adonis Dorado's poem, which was titled Pansit. So today we will be focusing on fiction. So what is fiction? I'm sure you already know or you have an idea what fiction is. But for the benefit of somebody who knows or who doesn't yet, literature is created, of course, from the imagination. So it's not real. Although there are cases, of course, for fiction to be based on reality. However, the entire situation, the entire story itself, the characters are only based on the imagination of the writer. It's not presented as fact, though it may be based on a true story or situation. So in literature, we also have types of literature which are in fact part of the fiction genre, which are the following. We have the novel, short story. An example of this is what we will be tackling today, and novella. So the word is from the Latin word fictio, which means the act of making, fashioning, and molding. So today's discussion is all about footnote to youth. First of all, we have to, before we tackle, of course, the short story, we have to get to know the writer first. So who is Jose Garcia Villa? Probably, I'm sure, most of you have never heard of him, but all of you should know him because he is really a very prolific Filipino writer who left behind a really important legacy for us readers, especially to you students as well, young people. So Jose Garcia Villa was a Filipino poet. He's also a literary critic, short story writer, and painter. So he's really into the arts, and he was awarded the National Artist of the Philippines title for literature in 1973. So Jose Garcia Villa was wrote during the time of the American colonial period. So he's one of those Filipino writers who wrote fiction using the models, following the models given to us by the Americans, who were the teachers who taught us a new way of writing literature at that time. So yeah, Footnote to Youth is an example of that. It's a Filipino story, however it is written in English, which were mostly the case of the writings during the American colonial period. Right, so he is also known to have introduced the reversed consonants rhyme scheme. You may search it yourself, people, in writing poetry, as well as the extensive use of the punctuation marks, especially commas. That's why he was also known as the comma poet. So that's his pen name, Dove Lion, something derived from Dove Eagle Lion, which is based on the characters he derived for himself. So what is Footnote to Youth all about? Hopefully you have read the entire story, but to summarize, it is a story of a 17-year-old teenager named Dodong who decided to get married at an early age of 17. So although his parents were against it at first, later on he was really allowed to get married. And so he got married to his childhood sweetheart or girlfriend at the time. They had 6 children for successive years, and then that's also the time when Dodong realized the mistake he had made as a young man, marrying early. So it's basically the character here was regretting his decision in marrying early. So the story ends with his 18-year-old son Blas asking for his permission to marry. As an older man, Dodong already knows the consequence, and despite already feeling sorry for his son, he allows Blas to marry as well. So the entire story is written from the point of view of our main character Dodong. So he is narrating the entire story, and from his point of view we're able to really see, if you have read the regrets and the thoughts he had as a young man at the time, and realizing really the mistake he made by marrying early at an early age. So who are the characters in this fictional narrative? We have Dodong, that's the main character. When the story started, he was 17, and then there were the nameless parents as well, who were only called Itay and Inay, the father and the mother, and then the girlfriend or the wife, that's Teang, and then mentioned in passing or mentioned at the end of the story, was Blas, the 18-year-old eldest son, the character. So in this story, we will be talking about the literary devices. So when we say literary devices, these are the writing techniques used or employed by Jose Garcia Villa to drive to us readers the beauty and his style in writing his narrative. So from here, we will be able to, or we are going to infer literary meaning. And how will we do that? We will analyze the lines taken from the short story, and from that we will try to interpret what the significance of those lines are, the way they were used in the story. So first device is foreshadowing. So when we foreshadow things, it means that it's a technique wherein a writer will give us a clue or an idea as to what will happen or take place later on in the story. So it's really common in movies as well. Perhaps you've seen the following: A Quiet Place, 50 Shades of Grey, yeah, and then typically when we see in telenovelas or in movies wherein a picture frame suddenly breaks, you know exactly that something bad is about to happen to the story or to the people who are in that particular picture frame. So that's how movies literally usually use foreshadowing in storytelling. So it's one technique. So foreshadowing is usually at the beginning of a story, people. So in here, these are the lines that can foreshadow or told us an idea as to what will happen in the life of our main character as the story goes on. So the first foreshadowing was found in the first line or first paragraph of the story. So you have there, the sun was salmon and hazy in the west. So that alone is foreshadowing us or telling us a clue to the life of our main character. So the story started at sunset, meaning it's if we try to give significance to the sunset, it is the end of the day. And if we try to parallel it as well to the happenings in the story, we can also understand that the sunset in the story also somewhat parallels Dodong's decision to end his youth, right? So try to understand sunset. It's already the day has already ended. We're embracing the darkness, and it also juxtaposes as well Dodong's decision to marry. He somewhat has embraced the end of his youth and really excited at the time to embark on the new journey of marriage, which also we can say somewhat that he also somehow altered the course of his life. Instead of really embracing a bright future as a young man without any baggage or responsibilities, he decided to, in a way, embrace sunset or embrace the darkness in the form of challenges that lay ahead in his decision. Right. So that's what the line, the sun was salmon and hazy in the west, meant in the story, people. Second foreshadowing, second clue is when the character told this line in the story, what he had to say was of serious importance as it would mark climacteric in his life. So when we say climax, it has something to do with turning point. So in the story, the turning point in the life of our character is really his decision to marry early. So from that decision, we're able to tell that he altered really the course of his life. His decision to marry early changed the course of his life, as mentioned already. So that's what the lines in the story foreshadows as we go along the entire story or narrative. Footnote to you. Right. The third foreshadowing is the worm. So as mentioned in the story, it goes, a short colorless worm marched blindly to Dodong's foot and crawled calmly over it. Dodong got tickled and jerked his foot, flinging the worm into the air. So the worm is also somehow a foreshadowing as to the life that lay ahead for our main character Dodong. So like the worm, our character is also marching blind, really blinded by his idea of getting married, the happiness which he only focused on when he decided to get married at an early age. So like the worm, Dodong was blind, precisely like the worm. He was blind to the consequences of his action. And we can also really, we have also really seen that as I try to read the entire story. Footnote to you, really able to that really the character here was really blind. He was only thinking of the beautiful things in getting married. He was also really realistically blind to the bad things that can also happen to somebody who's marrying when you're not ready yet to embrace the challenge of the married life, like him, of course, being a teenager. And the fourth foreshadowing in the story is this one. As mentioned in the story, he walked faster, prodded by the thought of his virility. A small angled stone bled his foot, but he dismissed it cursorily. So the stone is another foreshadowing that really tells us people that rushing will really always lead to regret and hurt in the end. So like you, young people, students, 17, 16 years old here, students here, it's really important to really think not only twice, but really think a lot of twice before making a certain decision, because rushing will always, most of the time, lead to something bad. And mistakes that we do in our life, especially those mistakes which are really big mistake, it's hard to alter them in the future already. So yeah, so the stone here is a foreshadowing that Dodong's decision to marry was really wrong, and he somehow ended up getting hurt in the end in the story. Not physically hurt, but really he realized, or the hurt was in the form of a regret that he only realized when he got older. Because as we all know, age comes with wisdom, and if you're young, of course, you don't have wisdom yet, and you earn wisdom out of the experiences you will undergo in your life. So that's what the stone there foreshadows in the story.